The mystery woman in seat 7C, hero or ghost? The cabin was chaos. Oxygen masks dangled, passengers screamed, and Flight 209 spiraled into a deadly descent. Amid the panic, one woman unbuckled her belt in row 7C and charged toward the cockpit. "Sit down," someone shouted. "She's not crew." She didn't stop, but she didn't stop. She moved with purpose, like she'd done this before. Inside the cockpit, alarms blared. The first officer was unconscious, the captain barely responsive. Without hesitation, she slid into the co-pilot's seat, fingers flying across controls, stabilizers, override systems. "You can't touch that," a flight attendant gasped. She didn't even look up. "If I don't, we all die." And somehow the plane leveled. Passengers stared through the open cockpit door, stunned into silence. Who was this woman? She never gave her name, never waited for applause. When the plane finally touched down, safe but shaken, she vanished. No passport, no trace. Who is the mysterious woman in seat 7C? A fugitive? A disgraced pilot? A ghost from the past? And how did she land an aircraft no one else could control? One thing is certain, Flight 209 never should have made it. But thanks to her, it did. And now, the world wants answers. Flight 209, the ghost in seat 7C, the woman no one trusted. The flight from Anchorage to Seattle had been delayed 3 times due to freak weather. By the time Flight 209 finally took off, most passengers were already irritated, tired, and desperate to get home. The cabin smelled faintly of recycled air and airport pretzels, and the hum of the engines barely masked the grumblings of the overbooked holiday crowd. Somewhere near the back of the plane, in seat 7C, sat a woman who looked like she didn't belong. She wore an oversized army green hoodie, hood halfway up, the drawstrings frayed. Her boots were scuffed like they'd walked across deserts, not runways. A faded canvas duffel bag sat beneath the seat in front of her, and her posture was uncomfortably upright, as if relaxing would break something inside her. She didn't talk, didn't even fidget, just stared out the window into the Alaskan dusk, eyes sharp beneath messy, shoulder-length dark hair. The boarding pass said Erin Blackwell. No one paid her much attention at first, just another quiet loner, until turbulence hit. Somewhere over the Gulf of Alaska, about an hour into the flight, the plane bucked once, then again, harder. A few passengers yelped. Drinks spilled. A baby started wailing 2 rows back. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged on. Erin didn't move, but her eyes flicked to the cabin ceiling. A young flight attendant named Tara rushed by, steadying herself on seatbacks. Erin caught her wrist gently as she passed. "Cabin pressure," Erin said quietly. "It's starting to fluctuate. I felt it just before the first drop." Tara blinked. "Excuse me?" "The pressure. Either your forward valve sensors are misreading or something in the lower fuselage is venting microleaks." The attendant blinked again, forced a half smile. "I'm sure everything's fine, ma'am. Please stay seated." From the next seat over, a man in a Seahawks hoodie let out a laugh. "She thinks she's on Mythbusters or something." Erin didn't respond. She released Tara's arm and returned to staring out the window, eyes distant but unfazed. A teenage boy across the aisle whipped out his phone and started recording discreetly. "Yo, we got a live one here," he whispered. "Crazy airplane lady thinks the plane's gonna explode." The turbulence worsened. The overhead bins rattled. Lights flickered once, then steadied. The tension in the cabin thickened like fog. A sharply dressed woman 2 rows ahead turned in her seat, giving Erin a long, irritated glance. "Could you not talk like that? Some of us are trying not to have a panic attack." Erin didn't even look at her. Her fingers, resting on her duffel bag, tapped in a slow, precise rhythm. Another jolt shook the plane. This one harder. Now people were paying attention. The man in the Seahawks hoodie leaned closer, sarcasm practically dripping from his voice. "What, you got some kind of sixth sense or something? Should we all be taking notes?" Again, Erin didn't reply. She was listening, to the engines, to the wind, to something no one else could hear. Across the aisle, a young mother clutched her toddler tighter. "What if she's right?" she whispered. Her husband shook his head. "She's just a nutcase looking for attention. You've seen the type. PTSD, probably. Military dropout." Then the captain's voice came over the intercom, crackling, faint. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some mild turbulence. Please remain seated. We'll be descending slightly to avoid." The sentence never finished. The radio cut out with a sharp pop. The cabin went dead quiet. Erin slowly reached down, unzipped a side pocket of her duffel, and pulled out a battered leather notebook covered in grease smudges and weather stains. She flipped it open to a page marked with red tape. The man beside her craned his neck. "What the hell is that?" he asked. "Log entries," she murmured. "For what?" Erin didn't answer. Another jolt slammed the cabin. This one sent a service cart flying. A bottle of water bounced down the aisle. People screamed. The lights dimmed again, then returned in a sputtering glow. In the chaos, a uniformed man from the back, clearly air marshal or off-duty crew, stood up and pointed at Erin. "Hey, you, sit down, right now." Erin didn't move. The man stomped down the aisle, eyes narrow. "I said sit." But before he could finish, Erin rose, slowly, calmly, like she'd done it 1,000 times. "You're going to want to check the portside auxiliary tank," she said. "Right now. If I'm right, we're leaking fuel." The man stared, then scoffed. "Who the hell do you think you are?" "Someone who knows how long a plane like this can stay in the air without forward propulsion." He opened his mouth to say something else, but didn't. The lights flickered one more time, and somewhere deep within the structure of the aircraft, a metallic creak echoed, like the groan of something under too much pressure. And still, Erin stood there, completely still, while the rest of the passengers stared at her like a ghost had just walked out of the fuselage. The cockpit door hissed open with a sharp click. Captain Mason Rourke, a seasoned pilot with 22 years in the air and a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, stepped into the aisle. He wasn't one to abandon the cockpit under turbulence, not unless something was seriously wrong. And after the third sudden jolt and the inexplicable sensor readings, he knew it wasn't just the wind. He scanned the passengers, his eyes landing on the strange woman standing in the aisle, arms crossed, notebook clutched under one hand like a weapon. "You her?" he asked. Erin nodded. "You've got hydraulic bleed in your portside tank and pressure drops in 3 forward valves. The turbulence is a symptom, not the cause." Captain Rourke frowned. "You a mechanic?" "Better," she said flatly. "I used to fly the old ST-42B military freighters, same hydraulic roots as this 737 variant. Your backup stabilizer kicks in 10 seconds late on the roll axis. You've already felt it." The flight marshal standing nearby muttered, "She's been saying this stuff for 15 minutes. Passengers leaned forward, some filming, others whispering. Rourke's gaze didn't waver. "You flew ST-42Bs?" Erin pulled out a laminated card from her inner jacket pocket. It was worn and creased, but bore a Department of Defense seal, her photo, and a name, Loter Commander Aaron Blackwell, retired. Rourke took it, stared, then slowly handed it back. He turned to the marshal. "Let her come with me." "What?" "She's ex-Air Force. If she's right about the hydraulics, we've got less than 30 minutes of stabilized flight left." The marshal opened his mouth to protest, but Rourke was already leading Erin forward. The first-class passengers watched in stunned silence as she passed. One woman gasped and clutched her pearls like it was 1955. Inside the cockpit, Erin moved with the muscle memory of someone who'd been there before. She didn't ask. She didn't fumble. She sat in the co-pilot seat like it still belonged to her, and the younger co-pilot, Jensen, instinctively scooted aside. On the dashboard, lights blinked red and amber in an unsettling rhythm. "Jesus," Jensen muttered. "Fuel imbalance, pitch drift, bleed air pressure down 23%. Erin scanned the panels quickly. "You've got a triple sensor disagreement. Vent leak started slow. I'm guessing 30 miles after takeoff. Pressure buildup hit your left wing route 3 minutes ago." Captain Rourke swore under his breath. "Autopilot disengage in 3, Erin said without emotion. 2, 1. The plane gave a gentle but distinct shudder. The autopilot disengaged. Manual control kicked in with a subtle hiss. Erin reached over Jensen, hit 3 switches in rapid succession, then toggled an auxiliary stabilizer she claimed was probably never used before today. Rourke stared. "How the hell do you know this?" "I worked on this model before it was civilianized, McKinley Base, New Mexico. You never got the engineering logs from the night unit because the project was redacted. You were military. I was something else too." The plane pitched slightly left, just enough to make the coffee spill in first class. Rourke gripped the yoke. Okay, we're gonna divert. Closest strip?" "Yakutat," Jensen replied, hands shaky. "But it's mostly private airfield, not cleared for commercial." "It'll do," Erin said. The airframe won't make it to Seattle. You ride it another 90 minutes. This thing's going to break under its own stress. Rourke stared at her a time. You're too calm. She didn't answer, just looked out the front glass as if she was already landing it in her head. Back in the cabin, passengers had begun murmuring nervously. The sudden course change, the lack of updates, and the sheer absurdity of a hoodie-wearing mystery woman now inside the cockpit had people on edge. In seat 14D, a college student live streamed to TikTok. Y'all, this woman, no lie, just walked into the cockpit and started flipping switches. The captain let her. This is insane. If we die, someone find this video. 2 rows back, an older man with a Vietnam vet cap whispered, she knew the pressure was off. I felt it too, just didn't want to believe it. Flight attendant Tara walked the aisle with tight lips and a fake smile, whispering to nervous passengers, it's all under control, we're just taking a safer route. Standard procedure. None of them believed her. In the cockpit, Aaron's voice cut through the silence again. Your left rudder servo is compensating too hard. You're fighting it. Let me trim it manually. Rourke hesitated, then nodded. She adjusted the settings with sure fingers, and the plane leveled out smoother than it had since takeoff. Even Jensen looked stunned. You flew combat? He asked. Aaron gave a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. Once, over Nevada. Against who? That part's still classified. Captain Rourke raised an eyebrow but didn't press. 10 minutes later, the control tower at Yakutat responded. Their runway wasn't prepped for heavy civilian landers, but they would try. Emergency crews were scrambled, coordinates were exchanged, then the cabin lights flickered again. Aaron looked up, sharp. Secondary inverters failing. If the grid drops... Suddenly, the entire cockpit went dark. All instrumentation dead. The only light came from Aaron's glowing wristwatch, a battered, old military-grade Seiko. Backup panel, she said instantly. Give me 3 seconds. She reached under the dashboard and ripped open a compartment that Jensen didn't even know existed. Inside was a hardwired analog emergency panel. Manual throttle, pressure override, trim settings. Captain Rourke stared. They never showed us this in training, Aaron smiled faintly. That's because it was never meant to be shown. And just like that, the lights began to flicker back. Faint. Ghost-like. Bring us down, Rourke said hoarsely. She nodded once. The cockpit, still running on flickering emergency power, was now a war zone of decisions. Aaron Blackwell's fingers danced across the manual controls like a pianist facing her final concert. Outside, the clouds had thickened into a roiling gray sea, and the radar, what was left of it, suggested a storm front moving in from the Gulf of Alaska. Yakutat's short, narrow runway loomed 80 miles away, and the clock was ticking fast. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere was one of pure tension. Some passengers had begun praying. Others texted loved ones, I love you, we may be going down, while flight attendants passed around oxygen masks just in case. In row 5, the businessman who had mocked Aaron earlier leaned forward, visibly shaken. She's actually flying this thing, he asked Tara, the flight attendant. Tara nodded grimly. Better than anyone else here. Back in the cockpit, Jensen tried rebooting the nav systems while Rourke adjusted the throttle manually. But the plane was flying blind. Aaron didn't seem rattled. We're going to hit the outer rim of the storm, she said, eyes locked on the backup instruments. We'll ride the edge, use it to slow our descent. You want to use the storm? Rourke said incredulously. That's suicide. It's geometry, she replied coldly. Lift plus drag. I've done it before. When? In combat? She didn't answer. The cockpit went silent again as the first crack of thunder lit up the sky. Then a massive bang echoed through the aircraft. The left landing gear compartment had blown open prematurely, likely the hydraulic system finally giving out. Aaron's hands flew to the trim controls. We just lost symmetrical airflow, Jensen shouted. We're going down hard if we don't level. Rourke barked. No, Aaron said. We ride it. Ride what? But before he could finish, she leaned the aircraft slightly left, catching the leading edge of the storm's pressure swell. The plane jerked, then steadied. You're insane, Jensen whispered. I'm alive, she replied. You want to be? The clouds outside swallowed the plane whole. Visibility 0, wind shear rising. The storm pounded them like fists made of water and sky. Then, another bang. This time, the auxiliary engine failed. The cabin lights went out. Screams echoed down the fuselage. Oxygen masks dropped again. But Erin didn't flinch. "We're going to do a dead stick descent," she announced. "You can't glide a 737 for 80 miles, Jensen shouted. Erin turned, eyes blazing. "Watch me." The cockpit went eerily quiet as she killed the remaining thrust. The plane, now a massive flying brick, began descending, not falling, but surfing the air currents, manipulating flaps with muscle memory and instinct. "Trim it to 15 degrees. Flaps at 30. Don't touch the rudder," she muttered. "Why?" Rourke asked. "Because if you do, we roll and die." The plane sliced through the storm like a falling sword. Lightning arced around them. Wind screamed across the windows. And then at last, the clouds parted just enough for a glimpse of land, a thin strip of wet runway surrounded by pine trees and open ocean. "Yakutat," Jensen gasped. "It's short," Erin said. "Brakes won't hold." "What do we do?" She gave a tight, grim smile. "We bounce." "Come again?" But it was already too late for questions. Erin pushed the nose slightly up, flared the wings just as they crossed the edge of the forest. The wheels touched down. Bounce! The plane jumped back into the air like a rock skipping across a pond. Slam! Second bounce. Harder. The left wheel sparked. Third time. Crash. Tires squealed. The rear fuselage groaned like a dying beast. The plane skidded down the wet tarmac, sparks trailing behind them. Inside the cabin, people screamed, braced, prayed. Bags flew. Ceiling panels cracked. But somehow, miraculously, the plane didn't break apart. It slid to a halt just meters before the runway ended and gravel began. Smoke. Steam. A single crack of thunder behind them. Silence. For 3 seconds, no one moved. Then the emergency lights flickered on. In the cockpit, Rourke exhaled a shuddering breath. Jensen laughed like a man who'd cheated death. Erin just sat there, hands still on the yoke, staring straight ahead. "Everyone alive?" she asked flatly. Rourke nodded slowly. Yeah, I think so." She stood up, stretched her neck with a faint pop, and opened the cockpit door. The cabin was chaos, smoke and sobs and relief. Someone shouted, "She did it!" Another cried out, "That woman saved us!" Phones were raised. Applause broke out. But Erin didn't acknowledge any of it. She walked silently down the aisle, eyes scanning the crowd, then passed through the emergency door and disappeared into the smoke and fog outside, long before the ground crew arrived. She was gone before anyone could ask her name. The runway at Yakutat Regional Airport remained closed for 12 hours, not because the wreckage of Flight 209 blocked it. There wasn't any. Miraculously, the aircraft had landed mostly intact. No fire, no fatalities, only bruises, shock, and a silence so deep it felt unnatural. But Erin Blackwell was gone. By the time emergency crews reached the aircraft, she had vanished into the forest beyond the airstrip, a misty maze of pine and moss and ancient silence. No one saw her leave. No one knew her real name. She had been Seat 7C. No ticket registered under her name. No ID found. Nothing. Even the airline's manifest showed the seat as vacant. FBI agents arrived within hours. TSA 2. Something didn't sit right. "What kind of civilian lands a dead 737 in a storm?" one of the agents muttered. "She didn't just land it," Rourke corrected. "She manipulated the weather." By then, video clips from the passengers lay. Phones had begun flooding the internet. Grainy, shaky footage of Erin calmly guiding the plane through a descent that should have killed everyone on board. Her voice, measured, unshaken, giving instructions in a way only a combat pilot could. And then the moment she stepped down the aisle and disappeared. The video went viral within hours. Hashtags exploded. Ghost pilot. Seat 7C. Flight 209 miracle. Cable news networks turned her into a national mystery. Some called her a hero. Others suspected something darker. In Washington, D.C., a Department of Defense official replayed the footage for the 10th time. A silent recognition flickered in his expression. He picked up the phone. "Get me Brigadier General Reynolds." 3 days later, in a quiet cafe on the outskirts of Missoula, Montana, a man in an Air Force jacket approached a woman hunched over a mug of coffee and a newspaper. "You didn't want to be found," he said softly. Erin didn't look up. "Still don't." "We tracked the engine log," he continued. "That old 87 Mustang in the garage, you logged over 60 flight sims on its retrofitted rig. It was too precise for a hobbyist." She finally glanced at him. Her face looked older than the footage showed. Tired, weathered, but sharp. "Why are you here, Colonel?" "You were dead, Blackwell. Officially. Killed in the Cascade crash. Body unrecovered." That was the point. The man slid into the booth across from her. You saved 189 people. Some of those passengers were politicians, lawyers, influencers. You can't stay hidden anymore. Erin sipped her coffee. I didn't do it for them. Why did you do it? She didn't answer. Instead, she opened the newspaper. The front page screamed, Mystery heroine lands doomed flight. Government denies knowledge. Below it, a grainy still, her silhouette framed by lightning in the cockpit. Some are saying you're an angel, the colonel said. She gave a mirthless laugh. I'm no angel, just a pilot who couldn't sit still while a plane was falling. They're offering you a pardon. For what? She asked, voice suddenly bitter. For being buried in a lie they created? For flying a mission no one was ever supposed to know existed? The colonel hesitated. They want to recruit you. Again. Too late. He paused. I read the report from the Cascade op. You disobeyed orders, flew into the kill zone to save your wingman. And you did. You brought them back. Then you vanished. Erin leaned in, eyes now sharp as razors. And I'd do it again. The colonel studied her for a long time. You're a ghost, Erin. But ghosts like you haunt the right people. She folded the paper, slid it across the table. Tell them this ghost is done flying. He stood. You saved 189 people. And I'll save more, but on my terms. As he walked out, she glanced down at her phone. A new email. No sender. Subject. Thank you. My son was on that plane. You're not forgotten. She stared at it for a long moment before deleting it. Then she rose, dropped a $10 bill on the counter, and slipped out the back door. In the days that followed, stories about her continued to spread. Former Air Force colleagues whispered that Nighthawk 7 had returned. Old mission logs were scrubbed. No one admitted anything. The passengers of Flight 209 were the only ones who knew the truth. Some wrote books. Others chose silence. But all of them, to this day, remember the voice that came over the PA system and said, if you want to live, trust me. They still call her the ghost in seat 7C. And somewhere in the American Northwest, in a lonely stretch of pine and sky, a woman worked alone in a garage full of machine parts and silence, listening always for the sound of another plane falling from the sky. It had been 6 months since Flight 209 dropped from the sky and lived to tell about it. 6 months since the name Erin Blackwell became a ghost story whispered in hangars, control towers, and veterans bars. She'd vanished just as quickly as she had appeared, like some vengeful guardian angel with a pilot's license and a grudge against gravity. But while the world tried to move on, the sky had not forgotten her. Deep inside a high-security Pentagon archive facility in Virginia, a woman named Dr. Allison Kerr sat hunched over a flight data recorder, the black box from Flight 209. It had taken this long to decrypt because something strange had happened during the descent. Large gaps of missing data, overwritten telemetry, altitude inconsistencies, impossible readings. But that wasn't what made her pause. It was the audio. A moment recorded 2 minutes before the landing. A calm female voice, not from the cockpit intercom, but from inside the avionics system itself. Initiating glide vector override. Locking external nav assist. Write it down slow. Dr. Kerr rewound it 6 times. There was no input log to match the command. No trace of any signal received. Nothing that could explain how Erin had done what she did. Someone tampered with the autopilot, she murmured. Or someone became the autopilot. Suddenly, a second voice crackled faintly over the corrupted file, distorted but unmistakably military. Nighthawk 7, you are not authorized for this maneuver. Repeat, disengage immediately. And then Erin's voice again, soft and defiant. You left us to die once. I won't let it happen again. Meanwhile, up north in a small Alaskan logging town, a man named Jack Halbrook walked into a local VFW bar. The place was empty except for an old jukebox playing Take Me Home Country Roads and a woman behind the counter polishing a glass. Cold out there, he said, pulling off his gloves. Always is, she replied. Jack looked at her closely. You flew with Black Squadron? Her hand froze. Then slowly she set the glass down. I was ground crew, she said carefully. Jack slid a worn leather folder across the counter. Thought you might want this. She opened it. Inside were classified mission logs, old photos, handwritten notes, and a tattered patch, Nighthawk 7. She saved my daughter on that plane, Jack said. Not just from the crash, but from herself. The girl was a wreck before that flight, thought she was worthless. But that story, Erin's courage, it changed her. The woman behind the counter looked at him, eyes misting. Why give this to me? Because you knew her. And maybe it's time the world did too. 2 weeks later, an anonymous blog appeared online. Title, The Ghost in Seat 7C, What the Black Box Didn't Say. It wasn't a conspiracy post. It was written with clarity, compassion, and stunning detail, describing missions in Eastern Europe, secret rescues in war zones, and an Air Force pilot who disobeyed orders to save lives time and again, only to be buried by the same system she once served. The blog was removed within 72 hours, but not before it was downloaded over 1 million times. Then came the interviews. A former squad mate came forward, then a mechanic, then a civilian radar operator who saw an F-22 vanish from his screen in 2021, matching Aaron's supposed final flight path. Someone built a documentary. Someone else started a petition. And one day, on the steps of the Capitol, 189 passengers from Flight 209 gathered. They held candles, held signs. She saved us. Name her. Ghost no more. Back in Montana, Erin stood on a rocky outcrop overlooking the Flathead Valley, wind in her hair. She was no longer hiding. Not fully. She'd taken a job as a backcountry flight instructor for troubled teens. Kids with criminal records, broken homes, and no place in the world. She taught them to read the wind, to feel the sky, to trust themselves when no one else would. One day, a girl with fire in her eyes asked, "Are the stories true about the ghost pilot?" Erin smiled. "Some of them." "Did you really land that plane when no one else could?" She didn't answer. The girl leaned closer. "How?" Erin looked up at the clouds, then back at the girl. I remembered who I was. That night, she sat alone in her cabin, flipping through old photographs of squadrons long gone, of friends never buried, of aircraft lost to history. She pulled out a single strip of fabric, a seatbelt tag from 7C, charred but intact. She held it for a long time, then hung it above her workbench. Outside, a storm was rolling in, the kind that grounded normal pilots, but not ghosts. She zipped up her flight jacket, and for the first time in years, she smiled.